let's jump into another deep dive. This time we're looking at maximizing men. Practical insights on success, life, and relationships. To Conrad Reich, and well, I think the title kind of gives you the gist, right? It's a book aimed at men who want to, make the most of their lives, especially in a world that, as Riker argues, can feel a little bit, well, hostile towards men sometimes, We'll be talking about some pretty interesting concepts: natural law, red pill philosophy, even things like pheromones and attraction. It's a wild ride.
It really is. One thing that struck me right away was how Riker frames this idea of natural law. He presents it as like this fundamental principle for success, almost like there are these timeless rules, a blueprint that guys throughout history have followed to achieve great things.
Yeah, and he brings up ancient Rome a lot, doesn't he? Like those strong leaders, the clear hierarchy. He seems to be saying that played a big role in Rome's achievement.
Exactly, and he connects that back to today. Like, what can we learn from those guys? Seneca, the Stoic philosophers, their ideas about self-control, reason, virtue. Those aren't just ancient concepts, they're still relevant for us now.
Makes you think, right? Like, can we actually apply those ancient principles to modern life? But okay, let's talk about the red pill. I know that's a term that gets thrown around a lot, especially online. What exactly does Riker mean by red pill enlightenment? And how does it apply to, well, how men live their lives today?
Well, he uses the red pill metaphor to describe this shift in perspective. It's about seeing reality, without the filter, without the narratives that he argues are often imposed on us.
And he's pretty critical of certain ideologies, right?
Right, definitely. He calls out what he calls progressive ideology, arguing that they often present a worldview that, in his opinion, can actually hold men back.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back. He's all about encouraging men to question things, embrace their masculine, reject those societal pressures that might be holding them back.
Right. And a big part of that is taking responsibility. It's not about blaming others. It's about men taking control of their own lives and making conscious choices.
Which is a good segue to the next big thing he talks about: self-improvement. Riker's a big believer in small changes over time, right?
Absolutely. He talks about this 1% principle. Basically, if you improve just a little bit each day, it compounds over time. You end up achieving some pretty significant results.
He uses the example of Warren Buffett, right? How his discipline and consistency in investing led to, well, massive success.
Exactly. It's about playing the long game.
And he gets into some pretty specific techniques too. Pomodoro technique for time management, the Eisenhower matrix for prioritizing tasks.
Even that 2-hour rule. If you can do it in under 2 hours, do it now.
It's all about maximizing your time, being efficient.
Which ties into his whole time is money concept. Yeah. Time is a resource, right? Invest it wisely.
All right, so let's get into the part that I know a lot of guys struggle with: relationships, specifically attraction. This is where Riker really dives into those differences between men and women.
He talks about female hypergamy, this idea that women are naturally drawn to certain qualities in men, often related to resources and status.
He even uses examples from the animal kingdom to illustrate it.
Yeah, he's trying to show that this isn't just some made-up concept, it's rooted in biology.
So how does a guy actually use this information?
Well, Riker emphasizes that it's not about manipulation, it's about understanding the dynamics of attraction, recognizing those patterns that might influence how relationships play out.
So it's more about awareness than, like, trying to trick someone.
Exactly. He also talks about pheromones, those chemical signals. Sure. He argues that they play a role in attraction, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
It's like he's saying, don't fight biology, understand it. But he doesn't just focus on the initial spark.
Right. He talks about communication, setting boundaries, maintaining your sense of self within a relationship.
He uses that example of Mike and Sarah. Mike's struggling because his partner is very dominant.
And Riker shows how setting clear boundaries, focusing on personal growth, that can actually lead to a healthier dynamic for both of them.
So it's not just about understanding women, it's about understanding yourself.
Yeah. What do you need to thrive in a relationship?
It's about finding that balance where both partners feel respected and fulfilled.
Absolutely. One thing Riker doesn't shy away from is ending relationships. Breakups. Nobody likes talking about them, but hey, they happen, right?
He goes into a lot of detail, actually, more than I expected.
Yeah, he's big on clear communication. Be direct, no mind game. Treat the other person with respect, even if you're moving on.
It's about taking responsibility, I guess. Recognizing that your decision affects the other person.
Exactly. And he talks about the emotional side of things too. Letting yourself grieve, That can be tough for some guys.
Yeah, there's that pressure to just man up and move on.
Right, but he's saying it's okay to feel those feelings. Breakups are a loss.
And he actually frames them as learning experience.
That's a good point. You can reflect on what went wrong, see if there are patterns in your relationship. Hopefully you come out stronger and make better choices next time.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. What about career? Riker spends a good chunk of the book talking about that too.
He starts with personal brand, like What do you want people to know about you? What are your unique skills, those qualities that make you stand out?
It's about showcasing your strengths, right?
Exactly. And then, of course, networking, both online and offline.
He mentions a LinkedIn study, I think, showed how a strong network can really boost your career.
Yeah, it's not just about collecting business cards. It's about building real relationships, offering value to others.
And then there's the fun stuff, resumes and cover letters.
He's got some good tips there, actually. Tailoring your materials to specific jobs, presenting yourself in a compelling way.
It's all about making a good first impression.
Absolutely. And then he talks about continuous learning. In today's world, you've got to keep up, Rick.
He's big on expanding your skill, exploring new areas.
It's about being a lifelong learner.
He borrows that term mental models from Charlie Munger.
Yeah, those frameworks for thinking, approaching problems from different angles,
It's about broadening your horizons.
making yourself more well-rounded, both professionally and personally.
Now, this next part might be a bit controversial. Riker talks about being an alpha male in the workplace.
Term gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, some people think it's all about aggression and dominance.
But Riker defines it differently. He sees it as being confident, competent, understanding how power dynamics work.
So more about leadership than bullying.
Exactly. Knowing your worth, advocating for yourself, not letting people walk all over you.
It's about setting boundaries, right?
Yeah, just like in relationships. You gotta have those boundaries at work too.
Respecting yourself and making sure others do the same.
And he cautions against being overly dependent on your job. Having a healthy work-life balance is crucial.
Taking breaks, doing things you enjoy outside of work.
Right. It's not just about being happy. It actually makes you a better worker.
You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Exactly.
So self-care is important.
He talks about stress management, getting enough sleep, managing your time.
Even things like gratitude and forgiveness.
He sees them as ways to reduce stress and improve your well-being. And then there's self-reflection, taking stock of your life, figuring out what you want to change, how you want to grow.
He suggests mindfulness and journaling.
Tools to become more self-aware, understand your emotions better,
It's about knowing yourself, your strengths, your weakness.
and then taking action, actually making those changes, striving to be a better version of yourself.
It's a challenge for sure.
He's pushing guys to be proactive.
Which makes me think about this bigger question. Well, what does it mean to be a man today?
Riker seems to be saying it's about embracing masculinity, but also about self-awareness, compassion. It's a journey.
Finding that balance between strength and sensitivity.
Right. And speaking of journeys, he talks a lot about mentors. Finding someone who's already achieved what you want to achieve.
Learning from their experience, getting guidance and support.
He says mentorship can come from anywhere. Formal program, casual conversation, you name it.
It's about being open to learning, being a good mentee.
And eventually becoming a mentor yourself, paying it forward, helping others on their journey.
He ties it back to that lifelong learning thing again.
Always be curious, challenge your assumptions, keep growing.
And he actually criticizes the education system, doesn't he?
He does. He says it often falls short in preparing young men for the real world.
That's something to think about. So I guess the overall message is to be proactive, take control of your life.
Embrace your masculinity, navigate the challenges with confidence.
It's a lot to absorb, but it's definitely thought-provoking. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Self-improvement, relationships, career. But Riker doesn't stop there. He also gets into some pretty, controversial territory, specifically when he starts talking about societal forces that he believes are negatively impacting men. Like, he really goes after what he calls progressive ideology.
This is where that red pill stuff really comes into focus. Riker argues that movements like radical feminism and some Marxist-inspired theories, they've really messed with how we view. He even says they're pushing this victimhood narrative that can really damage men's confidence and potential.
So he's basically saying that these ideologies have actually changed how we think about men and their roles in society.
Exactly. And he goes even further. He argues that these ideas have seeped into our institutions, education, media, you name it. It's like he's saying, wake up and look around, man. These messages are everywhere.
He's pretty harsh on the education system, too. He uses the word feminized to describe it, suggesting that it often prioritizes things that don't really align with, traditional masculine traits.
It's a complex issue, for sure, but Riker's definitely got a strong opinion on it. He thinks the current educational environment can make it tough for boys to succeed. He points to things like safe spaces and trigger warnings, arguing that they stifle open discussion and debate.
And then there's the whole issue of the rising cost of college, student loan debt, which he says disproportionately affects men because they're more likely to go into higher paying fields that require, more schooling.
It's interesting how he connects those economic factors to the broader societal trends he's criticized. He's painting a picture of a world that's becoming increasingly challenging for men.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Okay, he also gets into some more personal stuff. Like he talks about weight noditis, that intense infatuation with a single woman that some guys experience.
He sees it as a trap, basically. Something that can lead to unhealthy behaviors and a loss of self-respect.
So, what's the antidote?
Self-improvement, building your confidence. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
He's all about developing a strong sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation.
Especially from women.
It's like he's saying, man up and build a life you're proud of. Now, this next part might raise some eyebrows. He goes deep into attraction and seduction, but from a very biological perspective.
Evolutionary psychology, mating strategies, the whole 9 yards. He even talks about pheromones and physical attractiveness.
It's like he's saying, don't ignore your biology, understand it.
Right. But he's also careful to emphasize respect and responsible behavior.
It's not about manipulating women.
It's about understanding those primal drives and using that knowledge to navigate the dating world more effectively.
And he's big on setting clear boundaries in relationships, too.
Yeah, expectations, what you're willing to tolerate, what you're not.
He uses that Mike and Sarah example again.
Shows how setting those boundaries actually leads to a more balanced and fulfilling relationship for both of them.
It's about asserting yourself, communicating your needs.
But also being respectful and open to communication from your partner.
But where does this all leave us?
Well, Riker's book is basically a call to action. He's urging men to take control of their lives, embrace their masculinity, face the challenges of the modern world head on.
He wants guys to question those societal narratives, invest in themselves, build strong relationships.
It's a lot to digest, for sure.
But it's definitely thought-provoking. It's not about agreeing with everything he says. It's about starting a conversation. Thinking critically about these ideas and forming your own conclusion.
If any of this resonated with you and you want to explore Riker's ideas further,
you can find Maximizing Men on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. It's a wild ride, that's for sure.
Absolutely.